Tonight on the Mac to the Future show, no Warren. Sorry, because Skype sucks. Speaking of which, we have the suckage of Skype. We have finally, for the love of God, the case between Samsung and Apple is closed. We have the free live personal Mojave public beta. There, couldn't even say it. And I got one other thing here. A Supreme Court decision regarding credit cards is somehow a loss for Apple. It's a loss for Apple. Yeah, all tonight on the Mac to the Future livecast. Yeah. Yeah, I have no idea how this is going to work. And I'm using Boinx Software's Mimo software to do the live cast tonight. I've got like a free trial with it for like the next year. What all the stuff it can do is really amazing, but like most software like this, it works best if you have somebody else that's like taking care of all that stuff for you. Yeah. So there's not too much I can do about that. So you know what? And already I'm losing my mind. I mean, I'm just kind of showing off some stuff here that this program can do. And it is really amazing software. I just wish I knew how to use it better. Maybe someday. Anyway, tonight, like I was saying, there's no Warren because Microsoft has updated Skype that far away to the point of making it completely unusable for podcasters. The way they did this in a brilliant move, they took away your ability to select an audio in source. So, my microphone here, or whether I'm doing something in audio hijack or loopback, making aggregate devices, something that I can take this microphone and various other sources and throw that all into Skype, throw it all into whatever program I'm going to use to livecast with. They have pretty much taken that away. So now the only thing that you can do in regards to your own audio that you want to push to the other person that's on Skype is you have to set the output via system preferences. That's the only thing that the current version of Skype is going to see. I know that earlier today we were kind of going around and around trying to figure out ways to do it. I've complained to Microsoft, giving them my opinion on it in both their forums and over on Twitter. And chances are it's not going to mean squat. And what I actually wrote some stuff down here. In a move that can be considered outrageous by nearly every podcaster that uses Skype, Microsoft has removed any way to select an audio in source from the preference pane of Skype. You can still select your camera and you can select your audio output, but you cannot select your own microphone. That's just it just blows my mind that they would do this. Now there is a way to get around it, and let me see if I did this right. You can go to the link that you'll see there on the top of the screen, hindenburg.com/news/2017/dark Skype. And on that page, you'll see a link to an earlier version of Skype. Now, this is not a link that is being hosted on Hindenburg. I'm sorry, this is not a file or a program that's being hosted on Hindenburg. This is a link to an earlier version of Skype that is directly on Microsoft's own servers. Now, how long this is going to work, I don't know. As soon as I get done doing this show, I kind of was late coming in and had so much stuff that I had to do before I got started that I didn't get a chance to try this myself. But that's one of the things that I'm going to do as soon as I'm done here, is try to get an earlier version of Skype to see if I can somehow or another use that earlier version and get things back to the way that I think they're supposed to be. And, the weird thing is there's a lot of people complaining in Microsoft's Skype section about what they've done. And this not only affects like home users of Skype and podcasters, but Skype for business as well, because they're changing all of this around to, they have I can't think of what the name of the program is, and I'm not going to go all the way over to Microsoft to try to figure it out. I should have had it written down, but I don't. It's a new cross-platform VoIP that Microsoft is putting out, that if you are a business user, and this is not going to be like a free program that they're going to include with Office 365. So, Office 365, the yearly subscription of $99 that gets you like all of the Office suite. So you get Word, Excel, PowerPoint, SharePoint, all of these, all the regular main programs. What you're not going to get is this new program from Skype that is their VoIP kind of new program, and it's going to do some really amazing things if it works the way that they say it's going to. It's supposed to be able to replace like a PBX. So for like a certain number of dollars per month for every single employee, you'll have like a virtual telephone number that people can call them on. You can do conferencing, you can do you can have 3 or 4 people on hold at the same time. It's, it's going to be all this and a slice of bread, according to what Microsoft is saying. But it sounds like they're getting ready to dump Skype. And it doesn't really surprise me that much, because let's face it, they're not getting that much out of Skype. What is it that Skype is doing for them other than being a money suck? What else is that they're going to do with it? I don't know. Now, if you weren't able to find that link, the other thing you can do is just do a Google search for dark Skype, which will besides bringing up ways to have Skype in dark mode, which we'll go more into dark mode in a little bit. It will also show you links to on various sites to get earlier versions of Skype. Yeah, so that's the deal with Skype. That's not why Warren isn't on tonight. Warren just couldn't make it. But even if he could have made it, there just wasn't enough time to get Skype set up the way that we would have needed to. We would have had to have either gone to like Wire or Discord, and besides the fact that he wasn't going to be available anyway, that's we'll get him back on next week. Now, something else I read today, and I read this on Forbes, and I didn't copy the link because, quite frankly, the entire article was an embarrassment. It was written by this guy named Ken Cam. And if I was Ken Cam, I wouldn't have put my name on this article about Apple and Apple Pay. The headline of the story is that a Supreme Court decision regarding credit cards is somehow a loss for Apple. And what this decision had to do with was that companies that accept credit cards for payment, which is pretty much all companies, can no longer favor one card over another. This was a suit that was brought up by American Express. I'm guessing in a bid to try to force more companies to accept American Express as payment. And, if you don't know how credit cards work, I'm not going to go into the whole thing here because it's frankly long and boring. But the long and the short of it is, especially with big companies, credit card companies give discounts to large companies that kind of push their payment method over other companies' payment methods. Like, for example, Costco, for a very, very long time, only accepted the American Express card. Now they only accept Visa cards or debit cards. And the reason for this is that earlier on, American Express and now Visa was giving Costco a financial reason to only accept their cards for payment. And when you're talking about a place like Costco, that could be a lot of money. So once, I guess, American Express started losing some of these subscribers to using their credit cards, they sued, went all the way to the Supreme Court, and I guess they won. Now, how this all affects Apple, I'm not really sure. Cam seems to think so. It just seems like Forbes and so many other companies, this is like the whole analyst thing all over again, lunging for the lowest common denominator when it comes to writers for their publications. And, like I said, this one was so bad that I'm not even gonna link to it. It was just so bad. He starts off talking about Apple, which is fine, except the article is titled "Supreme Court Deal Setback to Apple Pay." And again, the story is apparently that American Express sued someone, and he doesn't list it in the article who he was suing, over contract languages that allowed companies selling stuff by credit card to steer customers to use cards that make them more money. Supreme Court agreed that that they or someone, and again, not clear who, can't do that anymore. This somehow is going to affect Apple Pay, which is never explained, but there is a whole bunch of words after this explaining how disappointed Mr. Cam is with Apple. Now, considering that most people that use Apple Pay, when they select their own cards, and it doesn't matter whether it's American Express or Visa or MasterCard or any other legitimate credit card for payment, Apple doesn't care. They just it has to be a legitimate card for payment, and of course they would prefer it to be a debit card of some kind or a prepaid card of some kind, so that it reduces the amount of money that has to change hands, because Apple is basically just making like little tiny bits off each one of these transactions, and it's all the finances and all the rest of that doesn't really matter. The point is, if people are selecting their own cards to use with Apple Pay, then how exactly does this Supreme Court decision affecting American Express and someone else, because he never really says who this other person or entity is, how is this going to affect Apple at all? Right now, the second biggest moneymaker for Apple is Apple services after iOS devices. The Mac is like a third or fourth down the line there. But Apple Pay has been a remarkable success for Apple. Now, is it everywhere? No. But it's in enough places to where it's making money. I think Starbucks is the only one that's like bigger than it. But Starbucks, the Starbucks Pay thing pretty much just works for Starbucks. It doesn't work really anywhere else. So Apple Pay is the one that's everywhere, and they're the ones that are getting most of the press. So I don't get it. This is like the whole analyst thing all over again. Why they would do these things, I have no idea. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Apple and Samsung lawsuit that finally, after 7 long years, is history, and talk a little bit about the, very little bit, because I don't have it yet, the public beta Mojave. So if you will just kind of stick around, we'll be right back. Are you a new Mac user or an old hand? Wish you could know the ins and outs, keyboard shortcuts, or hidden tips and tricks to make you more efficient using your favorite computer? Hey, it's your lucky day, because Edward Eisen has written a great guide to knowing more about the Mac and the OS that it runs on. It's called This is the Light Side, and it's available through Apple's iBookstore or with Amazon. Better yet, it's not a stuffy old book that gathers dust on the shelf once the next operating system is released, because it's an ebook that you can look at anytime you want. It won't get outdated because it's continuously being updated. Information on setting up your new Mac, installing and getting rid of applications, security settings and what to look out for, keyboard shortcuts, some basic app recommendations, how to use Windows on your Mac, if you really want to, that is, advanced topics, searching, using iCloud, and much more. All this for a mere 99 cents. Go to the iBookstore or Amazon and check out Edward Eisen's This is the Light Side. It's the book you want on your virtual shelf. Yeah, okay, we are back. I didn't think to do this, but I should have, where I could have shown you guys the interface for Mimo. I currently have like just a ton of stuff here that I can do. The real question is, am I using it in the way that Boinx software intended? I don't know. I'm kind of learning this on the fly, but I've got the Mac to the Future logo. You guys saw that when you first started. I've got links here to text that I can very quickly and easily just put right up there on the screen. I've got the ads button. You see the lower thirds. It's right there. I've got the My Mac logo and the Mac to the Future logo that with a push of a button, I can make fade in and fade out. Let's see. What else do I have? I've got the opening credits. I've got the closing credits. I can, if Warren was on here and if everything worked the way it was supposed to, I could do a split screen here. You see me there on the left. Warren would be on the right. And believe me, it works because I have kind of tested this out a little bit. Let's see what else I've got. Of course, my camera is set up to work here. Let me turn off the lower third here for a second. I've got, or the crawl. I've got my lower third that can show up there. There's, I don't know if it's going to work. Let's see here. Will you be able to see it? No, I turned mine off. So there's Warren. See that, turn it back on. There's the Skype window that I can bring up, which you're not really going to see anything. Skype isn't currently running. I've got a background, just kind of general, that I can throw up. There we go. Okay, forgot that if I turn off my camera, you guys can't hear me. This is stuff that I'm kind of learning on the fly. So probably what I need to do is set up Skype audio, the audio for Skype, and my audio in a separate triggerable little thing here, so that I can turn that on and off, and it won't matter whether my camera's on or not. And because it's audio, everything goes in basically a level here. So at the very, very top level, anything I turn on at the very, very top level is going to show over everything else. So like right at the very top is the still image. If I hit that, still image is there. It doesn't matter what else is live underneath it. So it's really kind of cool, and probably not tonight, but another night I will set it up so that I can kind of walk you guys through what this program looks like. I mean, it looks amazing, and I'm looking at the image quality. Everything seems to be going really, really well. You guys know about all the problems that I had early on. It just seems to work. But let's move away from that, and let's talk about Apple and Samsung. Do you guys hear that noise? That's the sound of a bunch of lawyers that will finally see their significant others and families again. Now, no, it was basically just a press release that said that this is over, and this just happened today. There were no terms revealed as of yet, and I kind of wonder whether or not they're actually going to reveal any of the terms. I think that both Apple and Samsung would prefer to not make that public. I mean, this went on for so long. There's a lot of hurt feelings all the way through here. So, in Apple's case, they decided that when they came out with the iPhone and then Android came out with essentially, you call it what you want. It was a copy of iOS, or what did they call it? I guess it was just a phone OS or something like that at the time. And Apple didn't sue Google over it. And, I kind of wondered about that at the time. And I get the feeling that if Apple had sued Google over Android, the operating system, that Google could have come back and shown some prior art, because, I mean, let's face it, the iPhone wasn't the first smartphone. It wasn't the first slab phone that had apps that you could use. There was a lot of stuff about the iPhone that was somewhat derivative of other or prior phones that came before it. The big difference between those phones and the iPhone was that the iPhone was the first one that kind of put them all together at the same time. But I mean, was a lot of what the iPhone became, or what the iPhone was when it was first released, were the individual pieces of that all that innovative? I don't think so. I think that it was the fact that they put all the pieces together was what made the iPhone what it was. So they decided not to sue Android or Google, but to sue companies that were coming out with Android phones. And if they had been successful in suing Google and preventing them from releasing a bunch of phones in the United States, chances are things would be very different now. But through the power of attorneys and all the different areas that you can that you can delay things like that, it got to the point with the Apple Samsung suit that it no longer really mattered. After a relatively short amount of time, there were any number of Android phone makers out there that had released phones. So why even bother? Why even bother stopping Android from updating their system? I mean, there's enough differences between Android and iOS that if you prefer the things that either one of them do, well, then that's more than likely what you're going to stick with. And it doesn't really matter what reasons other people have for having the other phone or the other operating system. Who cares? At this point, who cares? Apple is making most of the money. They have the least market share between the major platforms, not so much between the major phone makers. Apple is right up there with almost every single country that they compete in as far as selling hardware. This is the whole Mac versus PC thing all over again. In Apple's prior heyday in like the 80s, before the bad 90s, they weren't selling as many computers as Windows, but they were selling nearly as many computers as other computer companies. Anyway, so here's the statement that Apple and Samsung released. This is the official statement. Plaintiff Apple Incorporated and defendants Samsung Electronics Corporation Ltd., Samsung Electronics America Incorporated, and Samsung Telecommunications America LLC would like to inform the court that they have agreed to drop and settle their remaining claims and counterclaims in this matter. It is hereby stipulated and agreed by and between the parties that, subject to the approval of the court, and I can't imagine they wouldn't, that pursuant to Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 41A and 41C, all remaining claims and counterclaims in this action are hereby dismissed with prejudice to the extent such are still pending, and all parties shall bear their own attorney fees and costs. Like, that really mattered. Both of these were both companies that had, they had so many attorneys on retainer that I'm sure that over the course of 7 years that there were people that came in and then before the 7 years was up, left the various firms that both Apple and Samsung have here in the U.S. Plus, of course, all over the world where all the other countersuits were being filed. So finally, after 7 years, all that is over. And one person that I know will be quite relieved is Bart Busschots, who does the Let's Talk Apple podcast. And if you don't listen to his podcast, you should. The very beginning of his podcast, he does like legal matters, stuff, that either Apple is suing people or people are suing Apple and so on and so forth. And almost every single month he has to talk about this. And it's gone on for so long that this entire matter is older than his podcast. So he's like in episode 50s, I think, at this point, somewhere along those lines. But it's a great podcast and you should listen to it. All right. The last thing I'm going to talk about tonight is the public beta for Mojave has been released. And I'm not going to put it on this computer, even though I've heard that it's pretty stable. Never, ever, ever, ever use beta software on your main computer. Just don't do that. That is a huge mistake. And if something goes wrong, and remember, this is beta software, so even it may seem stable, but there may be some process that you use that hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention yet from the developers. And as soon as you go to use that, your whole system could come crashing down in front of you. So if you want to use the public beta for Mojave, that's fine. But don't do it on the machine, your daily driver, the one that you're going to use every single day, because you will be sorry. If there's one thing I am kind of looking forward to with Mojave, it's the new version of FaceTime, which is supposed to be like multi-user. You can bring a lot of different people in, and I haven't seen enough of it to be able to decide whether or not this is something that I would want to incorporate into the various podcasts that I do. One of the problems that FaceTime has always had has been just crappy audio. Not so much, when you're speaking to someone else, of course, you sound fine. But what they're hearing on the other end, or what you're hearing from them, as compared to the quality that you would get from Skype or from Google or Discord or Wire or some of these other companies, it was night and day. FaceTime audio was just kind of crappy. So we'll see if their audio is any better, and if it is, then maybe that's something that we can use rather than Skype or Discord or some of the other things that I've tried along with other podcasters over the years. Now, Mojave is more like Snow Leopard as compared to some of the more whiz bang releases that Apple has done. This kind of feels more like what's the good word? Just trying to get stuff fixed that maybe didn't work so well in the previous version of the Mac OS, which was kind of what the previous Mac OS was supposed to be. It's what, we went from Sierra to High Sierra, and with High Sierra, it sounded like that's what they were going to do. That they were going to use High Sierra to fix the problems that Sierra had. But instead, what they did was they released a new file system that didn't work on a lot of the machines that Apple had put out. If you didn't have a pure SSD, then you couldn't really use the new file system that Apple had. But it sounds like with Mojave that they're finally getting around to fixing some of this. And, as these public betas come out, again, the public beta just came out today. The word that I'm hearing is that it is incredibly stable, and we'll see how it goes moving forward. I may put it on my laptop, the one that I'll take to the MacStock Conference and Expo, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I'm not going to put it on this machine. I don't trust betas, especially when it comes to operating systems, on my main machine. Or, maybe I'll do a virtual machine or something that I can play around with on this without it being my main thing. So I think that's going to do it for tonight. If you would like to get a hold of me, you can reach me, guy@mymac.com, probably. Also, guy@mttfgo.com. That is the official email for this show. You can also reach me. Probably the best way to reach me is on the Twitters, where my Twitter handle there is MacParrot. And of course, you can call our Skype number, which is 703-436-9501. And we will play any comments that you have right here on the show. So, last thing to talk about is going to be the MacStock Conference and Expo in about 2 to 3 weeks. It's coming up really, really fast. The MacStock Conference and Expo in Woodstock, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, is going to be taking place. And, you guys are probably sick of me talking about it, but if you miss it, you're going to hear about it. And if you hear about it, you're going to sit there and tell yourself, why didn't I go? This sounds like it was just an amazing time. And it's exactly what it is. It's going to be so much fun. You're going to have all these speakers coming to talk to you about productivity. You're going to have Tim Robertson and I doing the MyMac Game Show quiz with Bob Levitas and Barry Falk. And now, originally I thought we were going to have the CEO of MacSales.com, Motherword Computing, up on the stage as well, answering, the three of these guys answering questions. But I was just listening to TechFan, and he said, I thought I heard Tim say something about a robot. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with that, but it's going to be fun, whatever it is. I'm going to have all my mobile podcasting gear there. So if you want to come up and be part of the MyMac podcast, maybe even part of the MTTF Go podcast, depending on what kind of bandwidth we can find when we're out there, this would be a great time to do it. Going to love having, seeing all you guys and being able to talk to you. It's going to be so much fun. Total cost of the entire conference, not counting, of course, your transportation and lodging, is $179. And you, frankly, from, I think, Friday night until Sunday afternoon, you won't even have to spend much money in the way on food, because there's a Friday night gig, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. I don't know if that's going to be open up to everybody, but regardless, Saturday and Sunday, if you're in a hotel, almost all of them have some kind of breakfast now. Lunch will be provided at the MacStock Conference for everyone that attends, and Saturday night is the big feed bag with Barry Falk and the shenanigans that he has planned for the Midwest Mac something. I don't even know what it's going to be. Midwest Mac something is going to be fun. So that's what's up. I'd like to thank you all for joining me tonight. I really, really do appreciate it. And we shall see you next week, hopefully with Warren, on the Mac to the Future Go livecast. Thanks. Good night.